Hi, and welcome to Rebooting Your Life, which is it's the second one today, and this one is all about transitioning into motherhood. So there's the connection with the one this morning as well, and that impact how motherhood impacts on your life. So I would love to introduce Diane Brown. Diane, please, would you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Diane, and I'm a wellbeing life coach and exercise psychology coach now. That's not what I used to be. And I have a family, my husband and my little baby. And I'm really looking forward to today.
Oh, fabulous. Please, could you start by telling me all about your story?
Okay, so feels like a long story, but I know you're going to keep me on track, Emma, so that's great. So I've been on quite a journey. So up until 2017, 2018, in fact, I worked for a big corporate or a big multinational, and I was literally a high-flying exec in the sense that I travelled all around the world in my job. So I was, going to places like Singapore, Houston. That was just part of my job. I was a commercial manager. I did a lot of training with sales teams and big projects and things. And I've been doing that for 15 years. I loved the travel. I loved meeting people from different cultures. And that was me. And I didn't really expect that to change, other than I was really ambitious, driven, and wanted to get higher company. And then motherhood happened. So when I had my son, I took a year's maternity leave because I really wanted to spend more time with him. And that was all fine, although I did find certainly the 6 months were really challenging, because I found it quite a shock to my system to no longer be in control of my own time, and almost to not be in control of my own choices. And so that meant I felt a little bit, I already started to feel some stirrings of who am I? I was used to being this corporate manager person that people, looked up to and respected. I liked that. And now I was a mum pushing the pram down the road, going to the sort of coffee mornings I swore I would never get involved with, just to have some social interaction. And I started to question who I really was underneath all this.
Go on. And a bit of adult conversation.
Absolutely adult conversation. Yeah, absolutely. So the beginnings of change kind of came there, I think. But then I went back to work, and at first I was really quite happy to go back to work because, the adult conversation thing coming in again, and reclaiming this sense of who I was, and feeling like I was doing some sort of important work, and earning money was quite nice as well, because the maternity pay was not great. And I got back into that, but then after a while, I realised that if I wanted to continue to progress my career, I needed to get travelling again, because in the first year, 18 months, I didn't travel so that I could be at home with the family more. I was already travelling anyway, actually, because we were living in York and the company was up in Gateshead. So I was working home mostly, but I was once or twice a week commuting up to Gateshead. So I had that element already. I'd avoided the flying, but I realised if I'm going to progress and develop in the business, I need to start trying to travel more. And I started to do that, but then something unexpected happened. So I was really pleased that my husband was, was really supportive, and all the time since we'd got together and decided to get married, we kind of agreed that he would be fine with me traveling for my career and he could
Yeah.
handle things at home
Yeah.
with any
Yeah.
children that we might have. We'd
Yeah.
always had that arrangement. And I know that's compared to what other women get, that was actually quite a good position to be in.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And the childcare was covered and everything. But what I hadn't expected was how I would feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because although I enjoyed getting back into the work and meeting
Yeah.
the people again, I
Yeah.
started to feel really pained about being away from my son.
I
And
absolutely,
it kind of,
yeah, get that. Oh, have
yeah.
we got a delay?
And we've
Yeah,
got a
go on.
delay, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like them satellite link ups. I'll push on. So yeah, so I realised that, you know, I was being away from home quite a bit, and although, you know, on paper everything was sorted, how I felt about it wasn't. And I was feeling bad about all this time I was spending away. I didn't have a very good boss at the time at work who was not at all sympathetic, which did not help the situation, and who happened to be a woman as well, which kind of rubbed it in even more.
Yeah. Been there.
Yeah. And yeah, and I kind of, but I didn't really recognize myself what was going on. All I experienced was I was feeling worse and worse and worse. And it got to the end of 2015, and this is when I said, when I first got in touch with you, this was when I just was wiped out. I was this sort of crumpled mess, I think I called it. I wasn't really getting out of bed very easily. I noticed that when I dragged myself out of bed, I would kind of make myself a drink, sit at the kitchen table with the drink, and just sort of hold it and stare at it as everything else was being sorted out around me. And I think this went on for a while until one day I realised this isn't normal. Because it came on so gradually that I kind of didn't notice it sneaking up. But then I had that moment when I thought, what's going on with me here?
So do you think that is that turning point? Is that if you could pinpoint it to anything, it was that point?
It was that, and there was also an incident that happened a little earlier than that. So I would say there was more than one. I think I needed quite a few messages to get the message. So I think there was more than one thing that happened. The other thing that happened a little bit before that realization was I went on to a Women in Leadership course that was over in Holland. And, you know, it's supposed to be for women with great, you know, potential to be executives in the company and all this sort of thing. And I won't get too much into that because that's a different discussion entirely. But in that course, there was what should have been quite a simple, straightforward exercise on understanding your values. Understanding your values and what you stand for so that you can align that with your work so you can be more effective in your work. And as we did this exercise, I realised that I did not know what my values were anymore. I could not. I was sat staring at this paper. I'd spent so long doing everything for like what I thought other people wanted me to be like in this career. And then I'd spent so long trying to then fill this mother's role that again comes with all expectations of what you think people want you to do. That when I was confronted with what are my own values, I didn't know what they were. And I was like, I just realised I'd become really disconnected from myself. And that really bothered me and that stuck with me. This is years ago, and this really stuck with me. And so then that tied on later.
Yeah, that real feeling of numbness. Would you say around that point?
Yeah. It was kind of a numbness. It was kind of there was a person I used to be, and I'd like transformed into the person I thought the world would be. And
Yeah.
it's almost like I realised, oh, maybe I should think what I want me to be like, as if I'd never thought of it before. It sounds obvious now,
No,
but
but
I
the thing
spent
is,
so
it's
much
like you said,
time living up to
yeah,
expectations.
it's like, yeah, it's like you said before, when, you know, sometimes these things creep up on you bit by bit by bit. And it's like, you know, stress, you know, some of the people that have been most, you know, seriously ill in stress that, you know, I've done work with, you know, that though sometimes that those it's been so gradual over a really long period of time, you know, and when you're so busy and you've wanted something for like all your life and you don't have time to sit back and think, actually, is this what I want anymore? That is like, you know, when you do sit back and think about it, it's quite frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can be a shock, and
Mm.
especially if you then start to feel that what you want is a lot different to what you
Yeah,
have, which
yeah,
is what I started to realise.
yeah,
It's like, oh, how the hell do I do this?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, you were in a similar position as me. Well, I think we probably were. Is that, you know, my husband had supported me for 19 years with my career, and my career had always been more important. And not that sounds awful, but he supported me because I absolutely loved what I did. And but
Yeah,
then
yeah,
when I started not to love what I did, it was like, well, okay, so this gap in terms of financial part, how on earth do I make that work as well? Because that's a big thing. Also, it's
mm,
working out what you want, but also financially, how can you make that work? You know, when someone sacrificed things for you for so long, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
In that.
Oh, absolutely makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And so this was the point I came to was, I mean, again, I don't know if I'm just a slow learner, but it took me a while to get my head around what to do, because I'd kind of reached the point of knowing I didn't want where I was now, and only in terms of work. You know, everything
Yeah,
else was fine.
yeah,
I'd realised that that wasn't what I wanted. It was like, well, what do I want? And then that becomes a much more difficult
mm,
question if you've not thought about it for 15 years.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just not
So,
even
so I
featured. Yeah,
started, yeah. So I started exploring it really, and I explored a lot of these sort of find your passion kind of philosophy. You know, a little bit of it on a retreat got me started with getting back more into exercise, which had been a thing I'd enjoyed before
yeah,
motherhood. I'd
yeah,
started getting back into that more, and there were some online courses on, you know, trying to find out what you could be really passionate about, and, you know, looking for the thing that I would enjoy and feel made a difference to the world, because that was
yeah,
definitely on the list of things I wanted.
yeah,
Definitely wanted to feel I was making a difference in the world, and also, you know, would match a skill set I have that, you know, I could go out and
yeah,
help people with it. And I ended
yeah,
up coming back to this about exercise. I actually did wellbeing life coach training, and I do wellbeing life coaching
yeah,
with people, but I focus more on helping women get more active, because what I
yeah,
found in my journey was that was something that unlocked it for me. The
yeah,
more I looked after myself and my body,
yeah,
the more confident I felt to take the
yeah,
next steps. And the
yeah,
more I felt like, well, if I managed to do that, then, you know, if I can be brave enough to do that, I used to do these wild, mad triathlons and things. If I can be brave enough to do that, then what else could I be brave enough to do? And so it
yeah,
took me a while to get the guts up, and then it
yeah,
took me a while to organise it. But
yeah,
I decided basically to walk away from that organisation and set up my own business
yeah,
with no inner training in what I was going to be doing. So I had to go back
yeah,
to the drawing board,
yeah,
retrain, work out how to run a business, You know, I've been a commercial manager in a big multinational company. It's totally different to running a business yourself. And so, so I made all these changes so that I could feel like I was living a life that was then aligned with my values, feel like I did want to get out of bed in the morning, and therefore be a much better mother for my son. Because instead of dragging myself out in the morning now, I'm sometimes jumping out of bed quite early in the morning because I'm so excited about what I'm working on. Which is a total revelation compared to where I was a few years ago. Total revelation. And it's, you know, it's risky, it's scary. I'm not there yet in terms of making, you know, the business completely on solid footing yet. I'm still trying to grow it, but it's still worth the risk to be able to live a better, happier life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting that you talk about values, because for me, that was my turning point. When I was similar background in that I was in corporate for 19 years, and I was sat in a meeting, and something was said in that meeting, and I just it made me think, how on earth have my, you know, and it was connected to treatment of people, and you know, and how people were treated. And no matter how hard a job I've had in the past, I've always wanted to make sure that I treated people respectfully. And even if I had to make people redundant, for example, in the past, it was about respecting those people through that process and supporting them through that process. And that, for me, was where it all changed. It was like, actually, my values of all the things I loved about the company, I'm not sure it's actually still there anymore. And if my values are even stronger than they were then I've got to then, you know, make a significant change to what I'm doing so that I can live the values that I want to live by. So it's really interesting, because values were a turning point for me as well. Massive turning point. So, and it is really important.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was just going to say, it was interesting because at the time that I had all this going on in my mind that I might need to leave, was a time that the company I was in was pushing on company values really hard, and they had all these things that they said were values, but I knew when I went into meetings that people were not living those values. The culture and what they stated were the values didn't match up, and I had no issue at all with what they said their values were, but it was just lip service. It wasn't actually happening on the ground. And I was like, I can't be here.
It's really hard. I think, did you like a post that I did yesterday about smoke and mirrors? And it wasn't necessarily sort of about that, but it was about when I moved over to, it was about someone else that had actually worked within that company, and was finding it hard to kind of sell that company at that time, because there was it was smoke and mirrors, really, in terms of what was said they were was different to what they were. So it's you know, and when you're, you know, I think when you're very passionate about something, or you want people to connect with a vision or mission that you've got within your business, and you want to connect with, you know, the why you do what you do and all the rest of it, those values, you know, it's brilliant to have those values, because your people get behind you and they're on the same mission as you are, you know, and that's how it helps, you know, your business to grow. But actually, if you sit there in meetings and think, actually, the why that you talk about isn't the why, that isn't actually the what and the how of the organization, you just sat there thinking, you know, where's, you know, because for me, I'm very kind of black and white. I'm not blunt. I'm just honest. What you see is what you get. But I wouldn't want to hurt anyone with what I've said, but, you know, I wouldn't. So, you know, those, for me, values are so important. And within one of the programs that I've got within the Human Reboot movement, we talk about our vision and our goals of where we're going, and we also talk about our values and our value directions. So what values? So your goals, your values aren't necessarily goals, but who you want to be or the values you want to live by, need to be within the direction that you're going, if that makes sense. So it's a big part of people rebooting and knowing where they want to, the way they want to live, and sometimes I believe that sometimes when you, no matter how hard things are, if your values are strong and if the company you work for mirrors your values, you don't mind trudging through lots of like difficult times, or picking up a rubbish job or whatever, because you're all on the same mission, you've all got the same values. But it's when that happens, it feels like you're working for something that's not that it's not worth working for. I know that's really
exactly.
So it's really
absolutely.
So you rebooted your life mainly with exercise. So it's exercise psychology. Is it exercise psychology you do as well as part of?
Yeah. So I would say a blend of exercise and the wellbeing life coaching that I had. And actually that's what inspired me to create the business the way I have, because I know for a lot of women that struggle with being active and doing more exercise, it's not so much what's going on with your body, because everybody's body will move pretty much if you tell it to. It's what's happening in your head first. And the whole thing around mindset and, your attitude towards yourself, how you build your own confidence up, not beat yourself up for not being able to do something perfectly, all that sort of thing. You can apply all that to exercise and getting active. And then you get this lovely virtuous cycle, upward spiral, whereas you do the exercise, you feel a bit better about yourself, and then that helps your mindset, and then that helps you do more, and that helps your mindset, and it's getting people into this upward cycle kind of thing. So I took the wellbeing life coach training that I'd done, which had really inspired me and helped me get back into it. And then I went off and did a postgraduate qualification in sport and exercise psychology, so that I could take that part. And I effectively blend them together with my clients. So it's something that is very new, because I think I've invented it as far as I can tell. But it's working really well for people. And a lot of people, they don't need to be told what exercises to do, because going for a brisk walk is really good exercise. It doesn't require fancy equipment and things. It's more in the, how am I going to get motivated, and how am I going to keep it going if it gets a bit more difficult, which it always does from time to time. It's more about those mindset kind of things that I can help people with. And because that's my phone going off, and because I've been through this process myself as well, I can really empathize with people and where they are and how they're feeling. And it's not going to be right for everybody. I really believe everybody's own path, and the one thing they need to change that's going to help them is going to be different for different people. But at the same time, I feel like being physically active is a really underestimated tool that we have to help us feel better about ourselves. And once you start to feel better about yourself through physical activity, as I said before, you then start to think, oh, well, what else could I do? And it impacts other areas of your life as well. So I really want to give it a bit of a push to say, give it a go.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, because one of the first things that I did to kind of start rebooting my life was to, get back doing the exercise I did before, because I hadn't, had any time for myself. And that was one of the things that kind of, you know, and socially meeting people. You know, it was going to the gym with a friend and then also playing tennis, you know, and that, you know, and being part of that friendship group and those connections that weren't connected to work. You know, so that's really important. But I think, you know, when you like mental fitness in essence, you know, the kind of mental health part or the mindset part and the physical kind of your mental health and your physical health are very kind of inextricably, you know, they're inextricably linked, aren't they? You know, because you go for a walk or you go for a run, and it depends what, you know, what suits you. Running doesn't suit me. So but it depends what suits you. I mean, one of my clients, I mean, it's quite, we absolutely kill ourselves laughing, because she now gets up at 6 a.m. and goes for a cycle or a run. Now, right, if you'd have told me this last year, I literally would have, I don't know, I would have stood on the town hall steps and whatever. But you know, it's almost like we did it the other way around, in that we got kind of her to kind of have enough confidence to start making changes, if that makes sense, to then her to understand more about well-being and how she could affect it. Then she started to do those things, had the confidence to give that a go, and then literally she's gone from here where she was going like this to kind of, sorry, it don't work, does it, on this screen? It all it's back to front. I can't show you what I mean by it goes up. But yeah, but it's like little challenges that you set yourself. So you do exercise, it releases the feel good hormones, doesn't it? You know, that's you know, it releases endorphins. You know, that it helps you with you know, enkephalins, which you know, help you manage pain. It's very all of those things, you know, do have, you know, that is having a kind of a positive effect chemically on you, isn't it? But then also, it's not just that, it's also in terms of mindset. Oh, I did so many steps today, or I ran this amount of, you know, distance in this amount of time, and that's increased from last time, so therefore I've got a sense of achievement. So it's not just about those physical chemicals, it's actually, I've got a reward from doing that, and I've achieved something today. So no matter how rubbish a day you have, you know, you've achieved something out of that day, you know. So no matter how rubbish this life might, you know, or how they might be feeling, by just making those small steps, you know. And it's that, you know, challenging yourself, isn't it? And that part of, you know, well-being, which is all about keep learning. You know, and you can, you know, as people become more into exercise, they can start to learn more about, you know, nutrition, or they can start to think, well, actually, I'm going to go and join in, you know, going to achieve this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do a half marathon or a marathon. I'm not. I'm just being really clear about that. I'm really not.
Oh yeah, the possibilities are endless with it, and it's one of the key things I go out and tell people is, you know, you can start anywhere. There isn't a proper way to do exercise. You can start with where you feel comfortable and whatever you enjoy. I think a lot of people, and I find this particularly with older women who were subject to terrible PE lessons at school. A lot of women feel like, you know, they have to do exercise a certain way or it doesn't count. I try to just open people's minds to the opportunities, because it's really just moving your body. And if you move your body in a way you're enjoying, so much the better, because you're more likely to want to keep doing it. You can start with really small steps. It doesn't have to, you don't have to decide to do couch to 5K. You can if you like, but you don't have to start there. You can start with walks around the block. You can start with dancing in the kitchen to the radio. You know, you can start by having more family outings and things. There's so many different things you can do. And as you say, it builds those positive feelings about yourself, which effectively flows into the rest of life.
Yeah, and builds your confidence, doesn't it? It's like, I can do, you know, I can do this, I can do something. You know, and that actually at the moment really, really, you know, really important, because I don't know if you've noticed, but there seems to be a lot of people feeling really questioning themselves around confidence and self-esteem at the moment. Don't know, have you noticed that with your clients? Yeah, and this transition.
I think I've been noticing that for a few years with women, actually. And what I found shocking, because I was working in a male-dominated industry, and I was mostly surrounded by men most of the time in my career, I wasn't really exposed is the wrong word, but I want to say exposed to women. But I wasn't around women that much. And I guess my mindset kind of got into a male thinking mindset as well about how to do things. And when I went on this wellbeing retreat, and it was all women, it was a women only retreat, and there was a couple of people there the same sort of age to me, and there was a few a bit older, getting to retirement age and things. And I heard the stories from these women, and the sort of common themes between them about, you know, how they devote their lives kind of to other people in one form or another, whether it was to their career or to their families. And they kind of turned up at this retreat. All of them kind of turned up at this retreat from different backgrounds. Saying, well, what about me? What do I want for myself? And I think, you know, there's a lot of lack of confidence in that when it's been such a long time since you've decided something for yourself, then you lose that confidence of knowing how to do it, which sounds awful, but that's what happens to people. They don't have confidence to make their own decisions anymore.
It is. I mean, there's a lot of women struggle with self-esteem and confidence, but also, you know, going back to work or into this new normal, as so we're talking about, you know, people are kind of thinking, well, I don't want to lose that, you know, I've found that, or actually by having this break, it's made me think I do want to make a little change, whether or not that, you know, it might be that it's not, you know, that they're happy in their job, but it could be that they want to make sure that they start to look after themselves a bit more because they've been able to do that through lockdown. Or but I do think there's a real pattern of, even more than before, around that kind of can I get back to doing what I did before, and can I do it as well? A bit of that kind of imposter, a bit of the, you know, lack of inner voice kind of thing going on. So yes, it's a very, very interesting times at the moment, isn't it?
Well, what I see with COVID is, having been through these experiences myself, not COVID before, obviously, but having had my own sort of life shock moments. And I've had more than one, but I've talked about one today. Is that actually when COVID happened, that was almost less of a surprise to me. Although the scale's obviously bigger because it's affecting everybody at once, compared to within my own world, compared to what I'd previously dealt with, wasn't as bad. It still isn't as bad, which kind of says more about how bad it was before, to be honest. But what I think is that the people that have kind of gone through life and not yet come across one of these shock lights, COVID might be the first time that's happened. And I think that's very likely and very understandable if that's triggered for people suddenly seeing things a different way. So I do think we'll see a lot of that.
It's interesting because I was just, well, before I came on with you, I was just on the phone to a client, and we were talking about children, and that, you know, that sometimes things happen in their life, and something kind of bad happens, and they see that that's it, you know, that they can't cope with that. That's and it's almost kind of developing those kind of, like, on a smaller scale, it's like we develop coping mechanisms and our resilience of how we kind of go through those changes or through the grief or whatever happens, and we develop that. that, you know, is how our coping mechanism, that is our resilience, how we develop resilience, isn't it? You know, a big part of that. But sometimes, you know, people get to a point where they don't see that there is kind of an end, you know, a way out, to that. And, you know, a lot of children are kind of, you know, we're seeing numbers of, you know, unfortunately suicides rising in the, you know, age category between 10 and 25. And we were just talking about a child of 12 within their local authority. And that is just, it's just so sad, because, you know, when you think about, you know, it's like we do need to be trying to do more to try and develop coping mechanisms in people. But, and it's the same if you apply it on a much larger scale, isn't it? And, you know, as adults, we've generally had lots of more things to kind of deal with, and we've got our own resilience levels of getting through things. But this is just something completely new and different that, you know, has been thrown into our lives, that we, you know, we have to develop, you know, a coping mechanism for, really. So yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting times, isn't it?
Yes, the Chinese curse, that one, isn't it?
Oh, I don't. It's
Are you living in interesting times?
Yeah, I just hope that we keep things a bit under control, you know, and don't have to go back into full lockdown, because that has, you know, had such an effect on so many people. So, Diane, is there anything that you would like to add? Anything else you'd like to add?
I think maybe just to round up what we're talking about there. I mean, I went through a really tough time last year, actually, with an episode of eco-anxiety, and which, you know, is a different story, obviously. And I, you know, that was really hard to come through. But what I took from as learning from that, and as I came through it, is that everything passes. Everything passes, and you know, and everything. You can only live in now. You don't know what's happening in the future, so all you can do is make the best of now. And that can be quite difficult in our society when we're used to feeling dependent and reliable on the future being secure. And I think now people have seen the future's not as secure as they thought it was. As I say, personally, I didn't see the future as secure anyway, why it shocked me less. But I think the more we come to terms with that, living in the present, doing the best for now, then you're almost guaranteed to have your best life if you're living in the present, aren't you? Because you can only do, you know, with what you've got right in front of you today. And if every day you get up and you say, I'm going to do what's best for today, then each of those days adds up. So I try not to dwell too much on what's coming, because whatever's coming, I can't control. I can only live in the moment and today.
And it's that's one of the things that we talk around when I'm doing mental health training as well. It's one of the things we talk around when we're talking about kind of those feelings of like depression, or, you know, it's a transient thing, you know, and it will change, and it can change, you know. That's that's what's really, you know, it's important, isn't it, to try and remember that if you are having a tough time now, that can, you know, it will change and it can change. But also, like you say, by trying to focus on the present, that's what you can control right now. So so if you would like to know any more about what Diane does, and want to know how kind of bringing exercise into your life can, in whatever way suits you, can have an impact. Diane, what's the best way for people to contact you?
You can just message me through Facebook if you like. Presumably you can click on my name from this and just message me directly, or alternatively you can visit my website, which is fitbee.co.uk, and there's some details in there as well about what I do.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. And if you want to work on your mental fitness, then if you want to join, next week I'm running a free 5-day mental fitness reboot challenge. And if you'd like to join that, the link is above the video. So thank you ever so much, and I hope you're liking these series of rebooting your life. I'm certainly enjoying talking to the people that are wanting to share their stories. So I look forward to